Hello, I'm Montse Alvarado, and this is EWTN News In Depth.
I look up to a lot of Catholic mothers, and there's a lot about my faith that plays into me being a mother.
Maternity and motherhood. During our May devotions to our spiritual mother, the Blessed Virgin Mary, we celebrate the women who bring life into the world.
We are going to be there. We want to give you strength to make this decision because you are strong enough and you are good enough, and you can do this.
Nurturing women unsure and looking for a way out, we talk to the Sisters of Life about their mission to support motherhood and save unborn children, one encounter at a time. Fostering love, a look at the Catholic Church's role in supporting and encouraging adoption. And the faith journey of a religious sister in Greece, her story as she ministers, teaches, and mothers refugee children who love her right back. EWTN News In Depth is next.
Mothers bring something really distinct and irreplaceable, I think, to family life.
The month of May, the month of Mary, the month when we honor the Mother of God, mothers as the bedrock, the foundation, the core of our faith and our families. Welcome to EWTN News In Depth. It's my joy to wish every woman watching a very happy Mother's Day as we focus on the important role motherhood and the Blessed Virgin Mary play in our family and our spiritual lives. Motherhood comes in many forms, and during the next hour, we will celebrate that rich diversity and embrace of love. We start with a look at how the church, prayers, and faith support women and mothers. Here's reporter Mark Irons.
Being a mom is no walk in the park.
It's the best and hardest job out there.
And these mothers can relate.
It's the hardest job, it's the best job.
Little Dorothy Day, named after the famous Catholic social activist, sits next to her mother, Sarah Carroll, who is pregnant with another baby girl.
We're excited to give Dorothy a sister.
Motherhood brings joys and challenges, but the needs of moms come in all different sizes.
I think the natural reaction to when a woman finds that she's pregnant is happiness and joy. Everybody can't respond that way.
So how can the Catholic Church step up? Among its many programs, Catholic Charities is assisting vulnerable mothers facing unintended pregnancies. Sanctuaries for Life in the Archdiocese of Washington helps pay for prenatal care and provides essential items a mother and baby will need after birth. Michelle Williams, the program director, says with services like this, the church can help mothers make life-affirming decisions.
Have to do more than just say, no, don't have the abortion. It needs to be, no, don't have the abortion, and this is how we're going to help support you.
No matter what stage of motherhood a woman finds herself, there are going to be material as well as spiritual needs. The Mother of God is a guide. Mary is a great role model for all Catholics, and the care she showed for her son, a great example for all mothers. The Church sets aside this month of May as a special time to honor our spiritual mother and the role she played in the life of Christ.
We as Catholics bring great devotion to one of the greatest mothers who completely gave in to God asking her to do the greatest thing that she could and to be a mother. So I think I greatly look up to her.
Sarah Carroll says her motherhood is deeply rooted in faith. And for those looking for spiritual meaning in the everyday activities of being a mom,
The hidden things can oftentimes be the most powerful things. So I think
Noelle Maring has co-authored 2 books examining how the home and a mother's work within it can become a place where God is encountered and a spiritual life can grow.
I think one of the ways that women get confused or, frustrated in the work of motherhood is by this common, very modern understanding that our public life is actually the most important part of our lives and the hidden life is far less important. But I think we know as Catholics that it's really rather the reverse.
Maring, a mother of 6, believes a meaningful prayer life can be found even amid the distractions of being a parent. And she says a mother's role is crucial in showing children the love of God.
Mother really sees something unconditionally lovable in a human being. And we walk through our lives feeling like we're valued for something maybe utilitarian or something instrumental. But it is our mom, oftentimes who was our first introduction into that sense of being deeply loved without counting any cost.
Just remember,
We need to feel appreciated.
mothers need to be loved as well. Mark Irons, EWTN News In Depth.
The role of mother and nurturer in the church is often manifested in the good works of religious communities. To learn more about what that looks like, EWTN News In Depth went to Manhattan to spend the day with the Sisters of Life, a 30-year-old order of women religious founded by the late John Cardinal O'Connor, then Archbishop of New York, who believed fasting and prayer would bring about the end to abortion.
He really felt called by the Holy Spirit to raise up a body of women who could pray and to fast for the end of abortion and to work, works for those who can help them choose life.
Reaching women one judgment-free phone call or meeting at a time, the Sisters of Life help families choose life, providing shelter, supplies, and counsel in 6 locations in the U.S. and 7 locations in the New York area alone. And for those that don't call or live in places where they don't yet have missions, they embrace them spiritually through prayer and fasting. When vocations around the world seem scarce, the call to become spiritual mothers is strong. The Sisters of Life boast a median age of 30 and new postulants each year. I spoke with the Sisters of Life at their crisis pregnancy mission located in St. Andrew's Center, a former church in the heart of Lower Manhattan. We talked about motherhood, sisterhood, and fostering life with Sister Magdalene Teresa.
Thank you so much for hosting me in this beautiful house.
Oh, you're always welcome.
And so we're celebrating Mother's Day and thinking about what motherhood is. What is the definition of motherhood for you?
Wow, yeah, motherhood really is a foundational piece of our charism. Obviously our charism is to protect and enhance the sacredness of human life, but motherhood is kind of like, I guess, the floor or the ground that we walk on, and it's the foundation of a lot of what we do. And we think a lot about, in our formation, about spiritual maternity. So our work here, especially at the Visitation Mission here at St. Andrews, we are able to receive women who don't live with us, but are just really wondering what to do. And they're in the throes of the decision about abortion or choosing life. And for us, it's such a joy to just invite them to see everything a little different. Like, one of our questions at the end of piecing out all the details, but we'll say, if everything were different, if you had this dream and all the things that you hope for, if it were different, if it were this, what would you do? And they always say, of course I would give life to my child if I had all these resources, And so that's our biggest thing, is to make their dreams come true, because nothing should stand in the way of them achieving everything they want. Pregnancy is not a disease, and so we love to make, it's like really a joy to make that happen.
What do you think is the biggest obstacle right now for women to choose life? Is it material?
Obviously, it plays a huge part, the material. But I would say the spiritual and the lack of hope, and the sense of basically not knowing, to be honest, motherhood. Today we're focusing a little bit on motherhood, and part of what I see in a spiritual sense is the way in which women have not known motherhood from their own mother. For me, that's a big desire, is to provide that gift of maternity in our mission. It takes little things, like we do have a little bit of a cooking class that we teach here. It's to make chicken and different things, like a chicken salad, chicken soup, just to give them like, oh, I'm actually a good mom, I can cook, yeah. Which is a huge piece, and just little things to get to a bigger place, which is I can rest in my maternity, which means I can rest in joy of being with my children.
And there are some women who do stay with you and live with you temporarily.
Exactly. So at this mission at St. Andrews, we do a lot of interviews and try to see if they might fit at our Sacred Heart Convent, which is in Midtown Manhattan on the Upper West Side. And so our sisters there receive pregnant women who live side by side with them, and it's a beautiful experience for the women to live there. They feel so upheld.
And so you're 30 years old, right, as an order. What makes your mission so important now, and how is it different from when you started?
I would think that the beauty of our charism, it does speak to the heart, and I've seen women and men, actually. You've probably seen some of the volunteers are men, and they are moved to tears, actually, by our charism. And I think that it has I guess it is actually the maternal, like our spiritual maternity has basically unleashed something in the hearts of others, and the fact that, maybe our basic message is that you are made in the image and likeness of God. You are unrepeatable and irreplaceable. And because you're unrepeatable and irreplaceable, the child in the womb is, you're so loved by God. You're loved into being. If you were somehow not loved, you would cease to exist. So just the huge truth of that, nobody hears that. And so I think, if that's all we did, if we just kind of stood outside on a soapbox and said that, it would make some sort of an impact. But because it's shown in our actions and our words and what we're up to, it does seem to make an impact. I just think probably it was cumulative over the years. In the beginning, we were just finding our way, but now we have an army. We have over 20,000 volunteers. We call them coworkers of life. And they are so dedicated, and every weekend we have enormous groups of coworkers who wish to be part of something. And then all throughout the country, they're serving women directly in their area, and it's incredible.
We've seen a lot of the medical community making these screenings available earlier and earlier, where you can find out everything about your child. And you see sex-selective abortions. You see abortions that are recommended when you find out that your child has a certain ailment or what some would call a disability, which we know isn't necessarily that. Do you think there are pressures internationally and also here in the U.S. that push women toward abortion?
Yes, it's a huge, I pray about this every day, and if maybe anyone watching could pray about this, because it's a huge topic of concern that the medical community in general, because we're getting so much more facile at doing all the testing, and the testing is becoming more accurate, but sometimes, I don't know, God does something in the womb that is unbelievable, because I've had so many times where there's this amazing test that says the baby's going to have this really hard, very difficult anomaly. And then by the time it's born, we had everybody praying for this baby, and he became the king of the NICU because he had to go to the NICU because he was assigned there. But he was fine, and he was huge because all the other NICU babies are little. And so we were having so much fun in there with him. But I just think that the truth is, if we could pray for this topic, because the doctors having a sense that they are God, or that they can make this decision between life and death, I just don't think that's the right mode to think in. That, if we reverence life, even in the medical world, it would lead to great gifts. What we have in New York is there's a special outreach called the Perinatal Hospice with Dr. Pervicini. She got it right, and she really has a great sense that if there is an anomaly, let the baby live for an hour, for 3 days. Doesn't matter, but enjoy that life. And I think that that's been so beautiful. So at one point, no doctor had seen that, but she started inviting doctors in to see the half hour of a life or the hour of a life and the way the family responded. And so many doctors have had conversions on the spot. And so I think that there's a great need to share the joy of life, even if it's an hour long, and I think the fear that, fear drives people to abortion. So fear is what has kind of wrapped the medical community in saying...
Fear of the pain of loss.
Exactly. Fear of the pain of loss, fear of being sued, fear of medical issues. But it's important to respond to that fear really with love first, because perfect love casts out fear, but also some courage. It's very difficult. We walk with women. That's one of our big works, is to send coworkers or ourselves to the appointments with the women just to back them up. Because when a woman is told you have a 5% chance of having a Down syndrome baby, they hear 5% chance of having a Down syndrome baby. But what is being also said is that there's a 95% chance of a perfectly healthy baby. So to reinterpret, it's a huge work. And we really, I personally am on a rampage to ask for there to be a Catholic birthing center hospital in every diocese, but especially New York, because this is the capital of abortion here. So if there were, that could be a great mission for an order.
What is your message to women? What is the one thing you want them to take away?
Well, I think, basically, I guess bringing up trust, that, to lay our trust in the Lord and lay our trust in Our Lady. I think Our Lady, we were painting earlier today, Our Lady Star of the Sea, and she does want to be that anchor in a stormy sea that we're in at this time, and she does want to shine that light on where to go next. I also think she has her mantle around us, and we often just don't notice it, but we're wrapped in it. And I think she is a great model for maternity. She wants to teach us. I tell a lot of women who are open to hearing, she wants to teach us how to be moms, and she loves sharing all her secrets. So, yeah, I think
That's
that's
beautiful.
right.
Well, happy Mother's Day.
Thank you. Happy Mother's Day.
An interesting idea, a Catholic birthing center in every diocese. We pray Sister Magdalene's wish comes true and thank her for the love and inspiration she and the Sisters of Life share every day. Next, our expert panel on the state of motherhood in the church and a look at the critical role mothers play in creating a strong foundation for our faith community. We'll be right back.
I said, Lord, I'm going to take this phone call with you. So I walked into the chapel, answered the phone, and that's when the agency said, hey, you've been chosen, and I was just like, oh my gosh,
Coming up later, the joy of getting the call. Faith and prayers lead this Catholic couple to the wonders of adoption. And living as refugees in a strange land, these children receiving the love and acceptance of a nun who treats them as her own. That story ahead. Welcome back to EWTN News In Depth. I'm Montse Alvarado. As we celebrate Mother's Day weekend, we look at the state of motherhood in the church right now and the role mothers play in building the faith within the community. Joining us are leaders who help serve women in the Catholic Church. Rachel Ullman, the Executive Director of the Given Institute, which provides leadership training, faith formation, and mentoring for young adult women. She's also a mother of a new baby. Congratulations, Rachel. And we also welcome Janet Chavez, the National Coordinator of Magnifica, which is an apostolate that reaches the Hispanic community for the organization Endow. Thank you both for joining us today.
Thank you.
Rachel, Pope St. John Paul II saw the challenges Catholic women were facing. You talk about this all the time. He coined that term feminine genius in his apostolic letter on the vocation and dignity of women, hoping to remind women of the unique nature of their gifts. How is this relevant today?
It is so relevant today. I often talk about his work, and he speaks about the feminine genius having 4 characteristics: receptivity, generosity, sensitivity, and maternity. When I look around at the church and the world and see all of the challenges we're facing and the problems that we have, I think the magic recipe, the prescription that they need are those 4 things: receptivity, sensitivity, generosity, and maternity.
Rachel, thank you for that. Janet, riffing on that, do you encounter young women who believe they have a vocation to marriage, or are there religious vocations to spiritual motherhood too, all those kinds of motherhood?
Yes, Rachel, I believe there is a lack of information when it comes to vocation and state of life, especially the way it's communicated to women nowadays. But there is also an invitation for us to bring spiritual motherhood as a normal conversation to have and explain to young women what it is to be a spiritual mother.
Can you tell us more about that?
Yes, of course. All women are called to be spiritual mothers, and it is through our feminine genius that we can express this, whether it's through biological motherhood or spiritual motherhood. All women are called to pray for others, to teach others, and to accompany others, whether it's our own children, someone else's children, or society in general.
Rachel, let's expand on that. Without mothers, we have no future as a people or as a faith tradition. You know that. What do we need to do to encourage this motherhood?
Yeah, I think about St. Edith Stein, and she famously said, the world doesn't need what women have, it needs what women are. And a lot of the times we hear the world telling women they can have it all. What are the things that you can do, your accomplishments? And at Given, and what I like to say to women is that The world needs who you are. It needs your feminine genius, what you embody simply by the fact of being a woman, which is what Pope St. John Paul II would say all the time. Thank you for the simple fact of being a woman. So that's exactly what we encourage women to do, is to tap into who they were designed to be at that moment of conception as a woman, that great gift of spiritual maternity that we all have, which ultimately is a gift of self. You know, when you're a mom, you know that maternity doesn't end even when your child goes to bed or when they go off to school. You're always thinking about your kids. You're always thinking about their needs, and it's 24/7.
So it's 24/7, and it's not exclusive to moms like you both who have children at home. Rachel, you first, and then Janet, tell me a little more about that.
It's so true. I'm a former teacher, so I certainly, even before I was married and had children, I experienced that spiritual maternity with my students in the classroom, that you think about them, you care about their needs and how you can love them. And that's the case for every single woman. And I encourage every woman watching to really look around you at who are the people in your life that are suffering. Who are those around you that need that special care and attentiveness, those gifts of nurturing, hospitality, and to really dive into that over this Mother's Day weekend? What can you do to serve others and to love on them?
Janet, what would you add?
Well, I am blessed to share that I am both a biological mother and a spiritual mother. I have a daughter who's getting ready to go to college. I am a single parent. And by the grace of God, it was through my motherhood that I had a conversion and began practicing my faith. And in the way that I practice my spiritual motherhood specifically is that I've committed to pray daily for a specific priest within my diocese. There's an apostolate here that I pray a rosary for a priest in particular every day and just accompany him through his journey in the priesthood.
Tell us a little bit more about the church as mother. We hear that all the time. The church as a mother. What does that mean?
Well, it means especially we have to look at our Blessed Mother, who is the woman who started the story of salvation. She nurtures us. She accompanies us spiritually. We are her adoptive children. So we as women are called to model who she is. Look at her feminine genius as the ultimate expression and just ask her to intercede for us and guide us through this journey as we continue to discover who we are as women and how we can help others, how we can mother others in their journey of faith.
And women need that intercession now more than ever. Rachel, what are the greatest challenges the women you mentor are facing? Are they reluctant to become mothers?
Absolutely. The world is giving a very different message than what our church gives. And I think that all women need to know that motherhood is leadership. And we teach that at Given. It's very important to us that every woman knows that she can be a leader, no matter her realm of influence, no matter her state in life, her profession, that every woman can be a leader of maternal love and can ultimately change the world. She can change her local community through giving of herself and giving of her gifts to others. So yes, women face a lot of pressures to achieve, to accomplish certain titles, certain job accolades. But instead, like I said before, women, because of who they are, when they give of themselves to others, that's the greatest thing that they could do.
And tell us a tiny bit about Given. It was founded by the Sisters of Life, right?
Yes, and many other religious sister communities. So shout out to all of the consecrated women out there who are spiritual mothers to me and to so many of us. Given was founded by CMSWR, which is the collaborative of consecrated women across the United States. And we are born from their spirit of life-giving, nurturing to the church and to the world. And ultimately, we mentor young adult women ages 21 to 30 that come together for a forum in Washington, D.C. for leadership training, faith formation, and dedicated mentoring. And those women are paired with an established woman leader, either lay or a consecrated woman. And Jeanette is one of our mentors as well. So we are so excited for the forum this summer and the opportunity for these young women to have a spiritual mother that accompanies them in their professional, personal, and spiritual development.
Jeanette, back to the question about challenges to motherhood and whether women feel like they can be mothers. Is this the same for you as you minister to women in the Hispanic community?
Yeah, the one thing that I emphasize all the time is that in order for us to truly express our motherhood, we have to be in relationship with the Lord, because the Lord is the healer of our femininity. He invites us to discover who we are as women. And it is through this relationship that He shows us and walks with us. And in this healing our femininity, we are able to be confident in who we are as women and what we're created to be. And therefore, we can heal all the lies that the world has planted in our hearts throughout generations that we need to compete or compare, because we don't, because we're unique, we're unrepeatable. And we are to show this example to others by the way we live our life. But this can only be accomplished through relationship with the Lord.
Really quick before we wrap up, tell me a little bit about Endow and Magnifica.
Yeah, of course. Magnifica and Endow, our mission is to educate on the dignity and nature of women through study guides. We accompany women in their journey of faith through intellectual formation and intellectual intentional community.
That's wonderful. Thank you, ladies, for being Catholic women leaders and for sharing your gift of spiritual motherhood with us. Coming up next, adoption.
It's a real leap into the unknown. I think anytime you become a parent, you leap into the unknown. With adoption, there's a little extra leap.
Motherhood comes in all forms. The very special role of adoptive families, giving and receiving the love of children, how the Catholic Church is paving the way.
The call, the match, the joy. Millions of families have welcomed a new child into their homes through the miracle of adoption. Over the decades, the Catholic Church has played a major role in foster care and adoption services. And since the pandemic, some placement agencies have seen an uptick in activity. Kate Scanlon has this Catholic Life report.
Go, baby, go! Good job!
Virginia couple Francesca and Ethan Gross are the parents of 2-year-old Desmond. They say they always felt called to adopt, but experiencing infertility led them to act.
I just started thinking about adoption, and I called her after thinking about it a lot and just was like, why are we not doing this?
The couple said their Catholic faith influenced their decision to adopt.
We're meant to do this, and we're being called to this. We showed our profile book to the expected mother, and she chose us. So she said yes to us, and we said yes to her.
Although the adoption process can be overwhelming, the couple said it brought them closer together and made them a family.
We're just expanding our family in a different way.
Megan Lane of Catholic Charities of the Diocese of Arlington, Virginia, says the organization has seen growing interest in adoption.
We have seen a pretty dramatic jump in the number of applications we're getting from adoptive families.
Lane says families re-examined their priorities during the pandemic.
I do believe that families who are thinking about adoption really stopped to say, hey, let's go ahead and move on this.
She says word of mouth has helped grow their program.
For our program's growth, we have really taken such an emphasis on the importance of how our work is done that I believe people want to work with us more and more because they hear about that.
Catholic Charities of the Diocese of Arlington is part of a broader network of Catholic adoption agencies. In 2019, these agencies facilitated more than 2,400 adoptions. Most of these adoptions took place through the foster care system. The Church has always played a role in caring for orphans in America. The first documented orphanage in what is now the United States was founded by Ursuline nuns in New Orleans as early as 1727. More than a century later, the Catholic Home Bureau in New York became the first Catholic foster care agency in the United States to place children in homes rather than institutions. Dr. Gracie Christie of the Catholic Association is also an adoptive mother. She says adoption is a crucial part of the Church's pro-life witness.
Every child has to be defended and loved and welcomed into the world, and sometimes that means adoption.
Christie, who adopted her daughter from China, said the process showed her how God loves his adopted children.
How could God be so good to all of us that he could connect us across these incredible divides of biology and space?
Ready? Wow! Good job!
Francesca and Ethan say for those considering adoption, they believe discernment is key.
You're not going to know unless you kind of explore and discern and put it really intentionally to prayer.
From Leesburg, Virginia, Kate Scanlon, EWTN News In Depth.
A special shout out to all of you adoptive moms out there. What a journey of love. If you or someone in your family is thinking about adoption, here's more. Catholic Charities has a wonderful blog with information about how adoption transforms your life. You can find it at pregnancyadoptionsupport.com/blog. News headlines and This Week in Review next. News about immigration and refugees tops the Week in Review. The Biden administration has announced restrictions on legal immigration into the U.S. are being eased after tough criticism by fellow Democrats and refugee advocates. But Catholic bishops say the president isn't going far enough. Citing the pandemic, the administration had delayed allowing refugees into the U.S., saying there were not enough resources to resettle the thousands of vetted people waiting in camps around the globe. Critics said the president was reneging on a campaign pledge he had made to increase the number of legal immigrants allowed into the country during the Trump administration, which had set its cap at 15,000 per year. On Monday, the White House raised that cap to 62,500 for the rest of this fiscal year. The goal will rise to 125,000 in 2022. Many refugees, most of whom have been waiting in camps around the globe for years, are now cautiously optimistic.
We're not going to be able to get to 62,500 and probably not even half of that number this year. But what it does is it sends an important signal to refugees and to the rest of the world that we are rebuilding our program, that we are serious about getting to a higher number that's more appropriate for a country that is as large and as powerful and as welcoming as ours is.
The U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops released a statement urging the Biden administration to allow even more refugees into the U.S., saying, "We're in the midst of the greatest forced displacement crisis of our lifetime and know that there are more than 26 million refugees worldwide. It's imperative that we act now to ensure the safety of these individuals and their families." In a stunning move, the Biden administration is supporting new patent rules for COVID-19 vaccines, despite strong pushback from American drug makers. Global advocacy groups have urged a waiver of intellectual property protections to allow the manufacture of vaccines in low and middle-income countries, which have largely been left out of receiving the global vaccine supply. But critics say waiving patents, if approved by the World Trade Organization, does not mean the vaccine will come quickly enough.
I must say I'm deeply frustrated to see that the rich countries, and I'm living in a rich country in Switzerland, are really hoarding the vaccines, are completing their vaccination programs way beyond the vulnerable population, are not willing to share doses.
In the meantime, the White House is setting a goal to give 70% of Americans at least one COVID vaccine dose by July 4th. To make that happen, President Biden's team will have to expand vaccination sites. The administration will send vaccines to rural health clinics for the first time and offer roughly $630 million in funding for local government outreach. The Food and Drug Administration is expected to give Pfizer the green light for a COVID vaccine for children aged 12 to 15. According to a report from the American Academy of Pediatrics, children represent nearly 14% of all COVID cases in the U.S. Pfizer is moving towards vaccine authorization for children 2 to 11 in the fall. But for now, the studies are ongoing. The city of Lubbock, Texas, votes to become a sanctuary city for the unborn. While the new measure won't be enforced by the government unless the Supreme Court overturns Roe v. Wade, it does allow private citizens to file lawsuits. Family members of a person who has had an abortion can sue the provider or anyone who assists anyone in getting an abortion, but not the mother. It takes effect June 1st. Meantime, a new report from the Centers for Disease Control shows that U.S. births have reached a record low. Breaking down those numbers for you, the CDC report indicates there were just more than 3.6 million births in 2020 compared to 3.7 million in 2019. That is a 4% drop, the largest single-year decrease in nearly 50 years. The rate dropped for mothers of every major race and ethnicity and in nearly every age group. The biggest drop in births came in December 2020, suggesting the pandemic impacted the number of babies conceived at the start of the pandemic. Births have been declining in younger women for years, as many postpone motherhood and have smaller families. In discerning their future, women do not often turn to the church. Pope St. John Paul II called on societies to support women in every way possible and value their contributions at work and at home. As new waves of feminism and pandemic sweep the globe, women are making different choices, and they're not always the ones that we expect. Here to explain the feminine genius and to look at the challenges women face today, we're joined by Dr. Gabrielle Gerges, a postdoctoral fellow at the Ethics and Public Policy Center, and Serena Sigolito, editor of The Public Discourse, the journal of the Witherspoon Institute. Ladies, thank you so much for joining me. Gabrielle, let's start with you. We just heard about the drop in the U.S. birth rate. What are your thoughts on the American Families Plan and how they want to address this crisis in the new administration?
Yeah, thanks so much for that question. The American Families Plan, as I understand it, has several features that would be designed to target the dropping birth rate. One is that it offers families paid leave from their employment. It offers tax credits for the birth of children, and it also wants to establish universal pre-K and childcare. I would be sympathetic to things like paid leave and tax credits, but I think we should be really wary of a feature like universal pre-K and childcare, because that really incentivizes two-income households, and it builds in the assumption that everyone should be working rather than be allowed the freedom of choice to discern whether they're actually called to spend their time at home as a mother, primarily taking care of their children.
Serena, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I completely agree with Gabby. The problem with this plan is that it's not treating all families equally. It's not allowing each family to take the time to discern what is really right for them, whether that's having the mother stay home, which is often the case, or occasionally the father stay home, or just different creative ways that they can choose to structure their family life in order to follow their own particular vocations. So, I agree that the refundable child tax credits are a good thing, because those are sort of choice neutral, and those can go to a family whether or not they choose to put their child into a paid daycare program. And there are some really interesting new versions of this plan that are coming up from people like Senator Mitt Romney and various think tanks on the right that would avoid some of these problems with Biden's plan. So when the American Family Act expires at the end of this year, I think we'll see some really interesting conversation and debate about how to go forward with this.
And this affects women specifically. Serena, you closed your recent piece on Catholic feminism mentioning that the world needs women, physical mothers and spiritual mothers, married women, single women, religious sisters, working women and homemakers. How does the Catholic Church foster that?
Well, I think the Catholic Church is really unique and has something so important and so beautiful to offer the world, because we simultaneously uphold the truth of complementarity and the fact that who we are as body soul composites matters, and that it is a different experience of being in the world and of being a created being to be a man or a woman. So we uphold that and really hold a place for the dignity and the essential gifts of women as women. But we also see that a lot of the regressive or rigid cultural stereotypes where we're saying, all women must be X, Y, or Z, barefoot and pregnant in the kitchen, or whatever it may be from a particular era. That's not really, something that's coming straight from God or from the nature of reality. Each woman, again, has their own gifts and talents, and some women have vocations to work outside of the home. So I think Catholicism really has the tools there to unlock just a treasure trove of resources as women are discerning their own personal vocations and what's right for their family.
Gabrielle, you're a mom too. You're also a PhD. How does the feminine genius come into play in discussions about motherhood and Catholicism?
Yeah, I actually think that we have to actually give contemporary feminism some credit for helping us to think more about the feminine genius and how we recognize that. Because the contemporary feminism has put such strong emphasis on autonomy and women's decision-making about their choices, and decision-making about whether they're going to work in or outside the home. And feminine genius is a concept that forces us to think about all of the different ways that women are really capable of serving the world, not just in the home, but outside of it. And so I think by drawing our attention to all of the ways, it's sort of like they work together, even though we often kind of see them in opposition to each other.
That's right. Well, let's keep talking then about women in the workforce. Serena, in 100 years of women in the workforce, the top occupation remains domestic service and teaching. But we're also seeing a breaking in the glass ceiling with more women in corporate positions. Are these two then mutually exclusive?
I don't think they're mutually exclusive. I think it's a matter of preferences. And, you know, again, each woman has a unique vocation, but we can say that certain traits are often more characteristic of one sex or the other. So this desire to be nurturing others and caring for their development is something that we find really often in women, you know, in part because of our physical embodied experience of being able to be receptive to caring another being within us. And so I don't think that we'll ever see men and women have exactly the same preferences. So I don't think we should be striving for 50-50 representation in all of these different areas of the economy. But I do think that we should be striving for openness for those to be viable career options. If a woman is called to really have a demanding job as a CEO and to be working to make change on that level, you know, that should be a path that is open to her because she has important gifts to give and to supplement what has been traditionally a male-dominated industry.
And is that what you define as this new Catholic feminism, this idea that women don't experience their femininity or their desires in a monolith? Is that something that's new, happening now?
Yeah, I mean, I think, so it's interesting, you know, there are all of these different waves of you know, secular feminism more generally. And we saw, especially with some of the second wave feminists and, you know, you think even of someone like Sheryl Sandberg, and we have this lean in concept where there's a real sense that women need to be out there proving themselves and, you know, that we can do anything a man can do, and sort of conforming our life scripts to a fundamentally male model of this ideal worker model. And I think with my generation of sort of women who were born when a lot of the gains of feminism had already been put in place, there's not this sort of urgency and sense that we need to be out there fighting on men's terms. I think there's more kind of internal discernment and thinking, well, what do I really want? You know, so there's a lot more interest in part-time work. The pandemic has actually accelerated.
That's right. We saw that in the Atlantic with the conversation about women leaning out and deciding that part-time work and being at home was important.
Yes, and that is one trend that I think will continue to accelerate. You know, I've done a lot of research and interviews on this, and, you know, consistently in polling and things, women rate part-time work as their ideal option. So as that's becoming more and more feasible, especially with remote work, I think we're going to see more and more of that happening.
Let's then turn to the biology of motherhood. Gabrielle, Representative Cori Bush referred to birthing people in a hearing on racial justice this week, and she was talking about something that's very important, care for minority women and protecting Black mothers, but her controversial language was trending on Twitter. Let's take a listen.
I am committed to doing the absolute most to protect Black mothers, to protect Black babies, to protect Black birthing people, and to save lives. Thank you, and I yield back.
So then, Gabby, how are these emerging language changes, birthing people, problematic for mothers?
Well, I mean, I'm happy to hear that Representative Bush still felt compelled to use the term mothers when she was talking about birthing. But I think that the pushes like that to change the language are really an insult to the dignity of motherhood and of human beings generally, because they force us to narrow in on only one aspect of motherhood, which is the biological aspect, right? Like if we suddenly decided that we were going to refer to men who father children as inseminators, right, we would think that there's something really problematic about that, and we would think that we were in a dystopian world, right? So we need to have language that recognizes that there are multiple dimensions to motherhood. There's cultural, familial, historical, and we shouldn't have this kind of reductionist approach to the way we talk about the reality.
And there are policy realities to this as well. You've written about the Equality Act and the particular effects it has on motherhood. Can you describe that for us?
Yeah, sure. I think so. The Equality Act more or less erases motherhood as a kind of distinct and stable category. And so the problem with that erasure is that it's going to lead to the whole components of the infrastructure that our society has built up to help women, but in healthcare, you could think about needing to have female-only sections of a hospital, or the right of women to ask for a biologically female medical provider, right, say for their gynecologist, or in prisons where there are, you have it segregated by sex, even shelters for mothers who have been abandoned by an abusive husband. All of those things are completely vulnerable under the Equality Act, simply because it does away with that critical category.
Serena, any closing thoughts on that, the Equality Act and motherhood?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just emblematic of a larger cultural shift that we're seeing with, the transgender movement in particular. And that really, I worry in particular about adolescent girls, because we have seen, waves of rapid onset gender dysphoria. And so kind of by buying into this idea that your body and your soul are separate things, and that you can have a female soul in a male body and vice versa, we're really opening the door to a lot of, dangerous ideas that can cause young girls in particular to reject their bodies, and, there's just a lot of kind of hidden misogyny in there that is really, really harmful and doesn't do them the service of helping them understand the beauty of how they were created and how they are able to give the world what's inside of them, not in spite of, but because of who they are as young women.
As young women. That's right. Thank you, both of you, for joining us for this important discussion, and happy Mother's Day. There's a lot more. There's a lot more from EWTN News in Depth. We invite you to connect with us on our Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram pages.
We receive a lot of second-hand clothes. Some things just good for recycling. So I recycle into the dolls, whatever I can do and whatever I can give to the kids.
The remarkable story of a young sister, herself a transplant to a new country, giving the love of a mother to refugee children on the streets. Sister Victoria's faith journey when we return.
Raised Orthodox in Crimea, Sister Victoria learned about the Catholic Church in the French literature she read. Though she hasn't been to France, the books she loved told her most French people were Catholic. So why wouldn't she be too? Her enthusiasm became so deep for her new religion that she chose to lead her life as a nun. Now in Greece, far away from her own home, Sister Victoria's devotion to God grows as she mothers refugee children. Alexei Gotovsky of our Vatican Bureau has her faith journey in depth.
We're going to Victoria Square, to our so-called Afghani Park.
Every day, Sister Victoria Kovalchuk comes to the square to meet her friends.
Hello!
They call her teacher.
E-F.
And she comes here to give the children lessons in the open air. And she's much loved, as she always comes with treats and special gifts.
Orange! Woohoo!
Like these traditional Ukrainian rag dolls that Sister Victoria crafts herself out of second-hand clothes donated to the Jesuit Refugee Service Mission in Athens, Greece.
You can write your name here. What is your name? Fatma? Yes. This is the way how I do these dolls for my little friends.
Sister Victoria, originally from Crimea, together with her community, the missionary sisters, servants of the Holy Spirit, and Jesuit refugee service volunteers assist those in need from the Heart of Christ the Savior parish. Besides the street mission, they also run a free clothing shop, language school, and support centers for women. Since 2015, more than 1 million refugees have arrived in Greece, coming from Afghanistan, Syria, Iran, and various African countries. Some have left, but many have stayed and made this place their home. Jesuit Father Marcin Baran has been working with the local community, which he says consists mostly of migrants.
We have only one Greek Mass in our parish, but actually for this Greek Mass, the majority of people who attend the Greek Mass are not Greek.
Okay, for you, for sister, and for you, this. I tell them, I came here to be with you in your situation. When you cry, I will be with you. When you laugh, I will be with you. I can show you a little bit of love, what I have. I cannot change your situation. I mean, I'm not competent for this. Jesus is the one who brought me here, who puts this love inside me and lets me to leave my family and my country also in difficult situation. And they appreciate it. So it's quite mutual. Now again red, I do here this part. Yeah, beautiful. What is your name? Amir. We write Amir here, yes? And for me, you know, I don't put the name refugee or migrants. These are my friends, and these are the people of God, of my God, who created them, who love them, and of course I would like them to know Him.
And through this friendship, Sister Victoria has rediscovered God, who once called her from Crimea to work in Greece.
These kids, they are just satisfied, and then they will hug me, and then they will kiss me, and this is the best what I can get as a reward, these signs of love as a response.
Alexei Gotovsky in Athens for EWTN News In Depth.
Motherhood in all forms, this one in a habit. And that's our Mother's Day edition of EWTN News In Depth. We celebrate all you moms out there. I'm Montse Alvarado. We hope you'll join us again, same time next week. And as we say goodbye, a shout out from the staffers of this program to some special women dear to our hearts, our own mothers. Just like when we were little and we drew you a picture, here's our homemade Mother's Day tribute in Images of the Week. I love you, Mommy.